A story that we've been covering from the start. President Trump believes he could bring back Kilmar Abrego-Garcia to the United States if he wanted to, but he says he doesn't. And that is what the president told ABC News in an interview that aired last night. We've got international law professor Milena Stereo with us. You've been following this closely. The judge looking for those updates. Milena, what's the latest?
The latest is that as of last week, about a week ago, the district court judge who has been seized of this matter from the start had given the U.S. government a week-long reprieve of providing those daily updates about the efforts that the government is supposed to expand to bring Abrego-Garcia back to the United States. That deadline expired as of today, and as of today, the same judge has now reimposed deadlines on the government coming up in early May to say you actually do have to keep providing me with those updates and keep informing me of exactly what you're doing to facilitate his return to bring him back to the United States. As you said yesterday, President Trump, for the first time ever, said, actually, yes, I can do something to bring him back. But then he also said, well, it's up to the lawyers. We know that the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, has said that she's not going to bring him back, said that basically it's up to El Salvador as to whether El Salvador wants to bring him back. But as of yesterday, President Trump, for the first time ever, conceded that he could actually do something to bring him back. And again, as of today, the district court judge said to the U.S. government, you have to tell me again what exactly you're doing to actually make that happen.
All right, so we've talked about walking in this circle that we continue to be. It seems it's this one wheel that it's going nowhere, really. So we've also talked about holding the government in contempt, and there was a possibility that when she had first asked for these updates, the judge, that maybe she would do that. At what point does she stop asking for updates, or is she covering herself, if you will, on the potential that this goes somewhere else to the Supreme Court, and they say, well, you didn't give them enough time, and she's going to say, well, I asked for 30 days worth of updates. They gave me none, so I had nothing left to do but hold them in contempt. Is that the next step?
Yes, the next step would be for the district court judge to actually hold the government, in particular, to hold specific government officials in contempt. And if she were to do so, that would actually allow her to, if you will, jail government officials who are failing to provide her with these required updates. The Supreme Court has already ruled once that the government had the obligation to facilitate Abrego-Garcia's return to the United States. It is possible that the case will go all the way back up to the Supreme Court again on essentially a demand to the Supreme Court to clarify what exactly it meant by the wording facilitate his return. The Trump administration thus far has interpreted facilitate the return to mean that it's up to El Salvador to release him, and that if he were to turn up at the U.S. border, the U.S. would let him back in. Some argue that that's a bad faith interpretation of the Supreme Court ruling, and that the Supreme Court really meant that the U.S. government had to actually do more to bring him back. And so the judge is trying to put as much pressure as she can on the administration to say, you have to provide me updates on a daily or biweekly basis as to what exactly you're doing. And I do think that there's this looming threat that the next step would be to actually hold government officials in contempt. She has not done that so far, but It's possible that she will do that in the future.
A lot of people talking about this interview last night with the president. Obviously, the president saying, if I wanted him, I could bring him back. I'm not going to do that. But then you've got the DOJ and people saying, well, you appointed the Attorney General, Pam Bondi, and yet still, these are two separate branches of government. So really, the executive can't, in theory, tell the DOJ what to do, right? So is this something that Judge Zinnes can use against the government, or because we're talking about two separate branches here, not really?
Well, the implication here is, that the Trump administration from the get-go has argued that this is within the purview of the executive branch, that this is within the purview of the executive branch conducting foreign relations. President Trump last night, for the first time acknowledged that he could actually do something to bring him back. I think what he meant to imply was he could pick up the phone and call the president of El Salvador and arrange for the return on the diplomatic level. And so if the administration is saying this is within the purview of the executive branch, and President Trump is admitting last night that he can actually do something, I would argue that this actually goes against the government's arguments that it cannot do anything, because the DOJ, the Attorney General, serves at the president's pleasure. And so it is not exactly accurate to say that the Attorney General could somehow act outside of what the Trump administration wants it to do.
Okay. The one who can is President Bukele of El Salvador, and he has been very clear that he is not returning an El Salvadorian citizen, regardless of what any court, including the Supreme Court of the United States, believes or says. So we'll wait and see, and I think you're right, Malena. Next step can only be contempt if the government at least continues to say same things in before the court. Thank you again for breaking this down. We'll wait and see, as it seems it's just a time here that we're waiting.